It's Friday, May 21st, and the time for your Barbados Today morning news update. There's an appeal for a review of the COVID-19 protocol that continues to place limitations on the operation of businesses on Sundays. It's coming from President of the Barbados Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Tricia Tanis. She argues that with improvement to the country's COVID-19 situation, the protocols are now only serving to dampen business in an environment that is becoming more expensive. Her comments come as supermarket and service station operators continue to lobby government to allow them to open their establishments on Sundays and bank holidays.
We do think, however, that we're at the time where we should be able to see, particularly if you're seeing certain other business activities reopened, that certainly we have to look and question whether or not this current directive, the Sunday directive, or this directive that affects trading on Sundays, is still serving its purpose. We are of the view that it's probably not at this time, and therefore there's really no good reason why we should not be resuming trading on Sundays for those entities that wish to do so. Meanwhile, we still do have very high costs of doing business. Some of them, particularly the gas station operators, may have even higher costs of doing business after the minimum wage order was enacted in April, and therefore every opportunity that they need to be able to actualize more revenue to assist them with their overhead would be welcome. So, again, that's why the Chamber would call for a review at this time, a holistic review, to see whether or not, the interest is still being served by closing on Sunday, given everything else that has been allowed to reopen.
Meantime, the Barbados Association of Medical Practitioners is in full agreement with government to keep service stations and supermarkets closed on Sundays. BAMP President Dr. Linda Williams maintained that there is a need for residents to be cautious as health authorities continue to try to fully vaccinate a larger percentage of the population. Dr. Williams said while Barbados was doing relatively well in the fight against COVID-19, she cautioned that the situation could change very quickly. A financial consultant believes that Barbados' approach to doing business is about 20 years behind where it should be, and Colin Daniel believes businesses on the island need to move away from their heavy dependence on paper and fully embrace the move towards digitization. Daniel, the principal consultant with Strategic Consulting and Advisory Services, made the comments while speaking at the Domestic Financial Institutions Conference hosted by the Central Bank of Barbados under the theme Technology and Consumer Service in the Financial Sector.
What has been a challenge in this environment in 13 years of being back home has been still the reliance on paper. We need to get to a point where the amount of paper that's handled to do a remote transaction is not the same level that we have to do when we do an in-person transaction. So that's where I would like to see us transition to truly a digital approach to doing business. But we need to move the whole country forward in terms of digitalization. We have to change the culture, but we also have to keep the technology fresh and up to date to where it is in the source market of our traditional Canadian banks. So being 20 years late to the market, fantastic, we're there, but we should not be 20 years late.
The Pan American Health Organization has strongly advised against relaxing entry protocols for travelers who are fully vaccinated against COVID-19. PAHO's Director of Health Emergencies, Dr. Ciro Ungate, said officials of the World Health Organization and PAHO do not agree with relaxing measures since people who are fully vaccinated can still contract and spread the virus.
The vaccine does not protect from getting infected, although there are increased evidence that that is the case in a significant proportion of persons who get vaccinated. Still, there are many people that will still get infected, and by reducing the protective measures of the persons who get vaccinated, of course, there is an increased probability and risk of getting infected and passing the disease to others that have not get vaccinated yet. So in that regard, the WHO and PAHO do not recommend to change the entry requirements for the people who got vaccinated.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Barbados Today, news you can trust.
Now to the latest in our region. Health officials in St. Lucia confirm that there is a shortage of some pharmaceuticals in the country as a result of developments in the global supply chain. More in this report from HTS News Force.
Chief Medical Officer Dr. Sharon Belmar George has confirmed a shortage of pharmaceuticals on St. Lucia. The CMO was probed by veteran journalist Timothy Polio concerning reports of people being unable to get their prescriptions filled at pharmacies and healthcare facilities.
We've been hearing on other programs, people claiming that they cannot get their medication at our health institutions for diabetes and hypertension, etc.
There's been issues in terms of delivery in the entire region for certain drugs based on the whole situation with COVID. So we have been having shortages of some drugs within our central procurement unit and delays in terms of getting the drugs.
The COVID-19 pandemic has crippled the global production and shipping networks. St. Lucia's main source market for pharmaceuticals is India. India's domestic pharmaceutical market in 2021 is estimated at US $41 billion.
In St. Lucia, we get our drugs through the pooled procurement measure of the OECS. A lot of our drugs come out of India. So given the situation in the areas which manufacture the drugs, there's delays in us getting drugs as a result of all of this.
And finally, on the international front, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has welcomed the ceasefire between Gaza and Israel. The ceasefire began early on Friday, bringing an end to 11 days of fierce fighting in which more than 240 people died, most of them in Gaza.
I welcome the ceasefire between Gaza and Israel after 11 days of deadly hostilities. I extend my deepest condolences to the victims of the violence and their loved ones. I commend Egypt and Qatar for the efforts carried out in close coordination with the UN to help restore calm to Gaza and Israel, and I call on all sides to observe the ceasefire. I appeal to the international community to work with the United Nations on developing an integrated, robust package of support for a swift, sustainable reconstruction and recovery that supports the Palestinian people and strengthens their institutions. I stress that Israeli and Palestinian leaders have a responsibility beyond the restoration of calm to start a serious dialogue to address the root causes of the conflict. Gaza is an integral part of the future Palestinian state, and no effort should be spared to bring about real national reconciliation that ends the division.
That's news. But for the very latest, visit us at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook, and sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media in bus terminals, as well as screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. And you can also hear us on Mix 96.9 FM and Capital Media HD 99.3 FM.